All right, welcome everybody to the webinar. I'm Trevor. I'll be presenting today, and we're gonna be talking about something that we haven't gone over before in any of the curriculum. I think it'll be valuable. Like I was mentioning just a few minutes ago to you guys who were on before we started this, it's going to be a little more tailored to some of our clients that have been selling for a little while. But you guys who are new, if you're seeing this is still going to be valuable to watch. So everybody can stay, even if you haven't been selling for long or you're just starting, but it's going to be a little more geared to our more seasoned eBay sellers. I get a question quite a bit from my clients that are struggling a little bit, right? I mean, I get some that sort of take off on some of our strategies and really just embrace them and do well. And then I do have a few clients that occasionally will struggle a little bit here and there, and that's to be expected, right? Like we're in business and we're getting a startup off the ground, and we're going to expect to see some bumps in the road, and that's okay, right? But when in regards to the retail strategy, which at this point you would have learned quite a bit about or put into practice, where we're essentially using retail drop shippers as well as maybe wholesale drop shippers. So I'd say this kind of relates to anybody who's doing eBay, especially on a drop shipping level. If you get to a point where sales are really lagging, right? You're just not selling enough, or you're just finding you're spending a lot of time on the strategy, but you're just not seeing enough income to feel like it's been worth your time working at the retail strategy or this drop shipping strategy on eBay. I want to address that issue specifically in this webinar, because at some point or another, you're all going to go through it where sales, they slow down a little bit, or things just aren't going really smoothly. Like, that's going to happen in this strategy, and it happens to our very best sellers. So you're not isolated. I promise you're not on an island if you feel like that. So I want to address that issue. What can we do at that point when sales are slow, when things aren't going well using this strategy? And some tips that I've seen over the years that I've done this, some things that I've done to improve my own situation when I've sort of fallen into this issue as well. So this will apply to you. If it doesn't apply to you now, at some point in the future it will. So I think this is going to be good for everybody. Now let's just shortly recap kind of what the retail drop shipping strategy is, or what our drop shipping strategy is generally on eBay. Okay, when we're doing drop shipping, we're listing products that are coming from other suppliers. They could be retail suppliers, they could be wholesale suppliers, but we're listing other people's products, and when those sales close, we send the invoice or we order the product on behalf of our customer, and then it gets shipped out, right? That's drop shipping. The other model on eBay is that you source and carry your own inventory for yourself and do your own shipping. And some of our clients do that, and that's great. Others prefer more to do the drop shipping. I'd say under both circumstances, some of these principles will still apply. So if we're in that stage, right, let's say right now you've been selling for a little while and we're just not making as much money as we want to make. We're not closing as many sales as we want to close. Here are some key things that I would look at. So take good notes on this, because seriously, I want you to almost like write this list down while we're talking so that you can refer to it, because I promise it's going to happen at some point. Okay? So the first thing I want you to look at when you're struggling is I want you to open up your eBay account like I'm on here, and I'm on one of my partners' eBay accounts. This is a newer account that we recently set up that sells pearls. They're real pearls. They're freshwater or cultured pearls. They're not natural. I mean, there's certainly a difference between a natural pearl and a freshwater cultivated one. These are sort of like manufactured in that they don't happen naturally in the ocean where you just find it. So anyway, that's what these are, and we're going to use this as an example here. But the first thing I want you to look at, if you're struggling in sales, and I'm going to use this assuming we are struggling in sales. In fact, these items listed here, there's about 11. You can see right here, there's 11 active items on this specific account. I was actually the one that listed these, along with a partner, and we listed them on Monday, and so far haven't had a single sale. So I'm going to use this as kind of like a case study for what we're talking about, and we're going to go down the list of things that we can figure out, or things that we can do to maybe adjust how well we're doing here. So first thing, so put this in your notes. First thing that we look at is you need to, I mean, you basically need to, you need to address the fact that we've only got 11 items listed here. So like if I listed all of these on Monday and I haven't had a sale yet, like I'm not shocked about that, because we only have 11 items listed. Now, if I had 110 items, 10 times this much, or I had 50 or 60 and I hadn't closed a sale yet, I'd be a little more concerned. But if you've only got like 10 or 11 items in your eBay store and week in and week out you don't sell anything, I can promise you it's not necessarily, a pricing product or problem, or a product problem. It's probably you just don't have enough listed in your store. Because most of our strategy really relies on the point that you have to have a lot of listings in your store if you're going to sell on a regular basis. Like you look at some of the biggest eBay stores out there that are making really good money doing this full time, they don't have like 25 or 30 items at all, right? They've got a lot of items in their store. So I can tell you from experience, if you don't have more items, I'd say at least as you're getting started, you should have, around 75, 100 items. And as you're going along, you should be working up to the point where you've got 300, 400, 500 items or more. That's where you want to get, because when you have that many items listed, you're going to see regular sales come in. You're going to be able to figure out which markets are doing better than others and then cater more to those. You just need more items to really make this work. So if you're a new seller and you've only got a few items up, 25, 30, 40 items, and you're not seeing regular sales, well, don't let that shock you, because you probably won't. You need to get more items in your store if you're going to see regular sales. If you're a more seasoned seller and you've got 200, 300, 400, 500 listings and you're not seeing sales, then it's probably another issue that we're going to address. So that's item number one. How many items do you have in your store? If you don't have much, you need to get more in there. And because drop shipping is so easy, right? You have unlimited inventory options. So it's not like we really don't have any excuse here to not have more items listed. And in this example, we've got this particular seller. These actually aren't drop shipped items. These are items that we're sourcing out of China, and we have a lot more items that we can add. So that'll be one of the first things I do over the coming weeks, is I'm going to help this company get all of their stuff in onto eBay. Don't just test a couple items. Get lots of stuff in there, and then we'll figure out what to do. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is, I guess I'd say it like this: look at your products honestly and say, okay, for the time of year, which it's November right now, do people buy this kind of stuff in November? So look at seasonality. Now we're looking at pearls here. All of the items here are pearls. Pearls sell any time of the year, right? People buy pearls for all sorts of different occasions, anniversaries, special occasions, gifts, birthday gifts. Certainly over Christmas, we'll probably see a spark in sales with pearls. But that's not true of all products, right? So, I've had a few clients that I've worked with that hadn't really gone through their inventory a lot recently. May have several hundred items listed or whatever, and they've been leaving some of their stuff that they were trying to sell in early fall, right? Like we're talking like some, still some yard decor type stuff, a lot of yard decor, some stuff that would have worked better in the summer, some more outdoor types of products, so that when the weather actually starts to cool down, I know the demand of that kind of stuff is going down. And so like if you've got a store full of stuff for the spring and summer when it's winter, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to be shocked why you're not doing a lot in sales, right? Like I'm not saying you can't sell a lawnmower in the middle of November, because you can, but it's just not as likely. So, if you're doing drop shipping, give yourself an opportunity by listing more seasonal products. We're in November, so what's going to be selling? Well, it could be, holiday decor, Thanksgiving decor, fall decor. Luckily, when we get into December, all the demand for almost everything goes up, but certainly not as much for your summer products. So if you still have those types of products in your store, let's adjust our products for seasonality. I mean, that should be a no-brainer for us, and that's something, that I want you guys to remember. If you've got 300 or 400 listings, sometimes it's hard to manage it all, but that's something you've got to look at. Make sure your stuff is in season. All right, so that's the second point. Third point is, you're not closing sales, so let's look at your titles on your products. Because a lot of times if you're not closing sales, it's due to the fact that you're not getting a whole lot of exposure on your listings. So I'll just show you right here. Let's go into a few of these listings and we'll see if you guys can come up with maybe some helps on our titles. In fact, I'm in this eBay account. This should be similar for most of you guys, but if you go into your eBay account and then find your all selling section right here, we could click all selling or active. It'll make it to where you can see all of your current listings at a glance, right? And you can, we're only seeing 10 items on this page, so we can go to 25, so we can see everything. So I can see everything at a glance here, and then I can see a lot of my titles. I'm gonna click on a couple of these, and we're gonna look and to see if some of the titles are a problem. I show you this section specifically though for this reason right here. You can see your views and watches or watchers for each given item. So you'll see this one on top has 19 views. This one right here has 12 views and a watcher. 6, 3, 4. This one only has 1. That might be something we look at. 4, 1. Here's another one. And these have been on eBay for 4 or 5 days. So 1 view in 4 or 5 days, that's a little concerning to me. So we need to look at why that is. Maybe it's the title. So we'll look at some of these titles. I've got a question coming from Catherine. I might have you clarify this a little, Catherine. But you said what is the hit rate based on experience? So clarify that. What do you mean exactly by hit rate? Like are we talking like your conversion rate? So for how many views it'll, to create a buyer, or are we talking about just raw traffic into the site? See if you can clarify that for me a little bit. And then Julie, you'd mentioned that the sound keeps cutting in and out. Is anybody else having problems with that, or has the audio been pretty clear so far? Might just be on your end, Julie. I'm not sure. Well, give me some feedback, guys. Has the audio been pretty clear as we've gone on? We're still sort of testing this new system, so I like to try to get some feedback from you guys. Yeah, in and out at least. I'm getting mixed feedback. It might be your internet connections, really, because some people are saying it's pretty crystal clear. Others are saying, yeah, it's cutting in and out a little bit. But anyway, good feedback. I appreciate that. But going back to your question, Catherine, you clarified that. You said meaning percentage of sales to listings. That's hard to say because it's really, that's really dependent on like where your emphasis is. So for example, if the majority of your listings are furniture items, like higher priced items, we'll say just generally higher ticket items, that percentage is going to be a lot lower because you're just not going to sell as many. But if you were selling like kids' toys that were $50 an item, like you'll see a lot more sales per listing made. So that's tough to say. All I know is, like, if you're going to be making a sizable enough amount of money to make all of this worth your time, you've got to be in the hundreds. And for the most part, I like to get you guys out of like we're just listing $50, $60 items to we've got some really nice higher end pieces where you're selling things for $200, $300, $400, where every time you make a sale, if you're only making 10% on a $400 item, still you're making $40. If you made, if you made 20% on that, you'd be making $80. That would be that would absolutely be worth your time. So early on in the game, you guys might be doing a lot of smaller items just to get some sales going, but we're going to work up to it to where we've got higher ticket stuff. But I can't really answer that for sure because it's really dependent by a lot of variables, and it just depends on what industry you're listing in. So that's something we could look at a little more in the future. Okay, so let me just check to make sure I'm not getting any other questions coming in. Okay, got it. All right, so let's actually look at a couple of these. We're talking about titles maybe being an issue here, right? I've had these listings up for a little while. Some are doing better than others. Let's look at this one right here. This one only has one sad view, and I would have thought it would have been doing better than this. Okay, so this is it's a cultured freshwater oval pearl bracelet, and you can see some keywords that are being used here: fashion, wedding, bridal, new, and bridesmaid. Okay, and I'm going to let you guys just look at this. I know you guys may not know, maybe some of you know a little more about pearls, I don't know, but I'm going to ask you if you think this title's good or you think it could use some work. And then you can see the picture here. I'll just zoom in. They're actually really nice. They're really well made bracelets. That's why it's $34.90 or $34.99. Here's the description down here. Gives you some of the specifics of the product. Anyway, so my question is first of all, what do you guys think of the title? And where can we improve if we can? Jane has a thought. She says maybe the type of clasp needs to be in the title. That could be true. Because the question is, Jane, do people actually, when you're looking for a bracelet, is that something you might look for? Like, would you type in pearl bracelet with XYZ clasp? And I think you're saying that, yeah, people probably would, right? Because just to review, whatever's here in your guys' title, like this is really what drives visitors to your eBay listing, right? Like you got keywords here that are used. If somebody typed in freshwater bracelet and then pearl, my listing would come up. If somebody typed in oval pearl wedding bracelet, my listing would come up because the keywords are here. So any combination of keywords here is pretty important. Although there is some indication that keywords that are used towards the start of your title carry a little more weight. So that's something to consider. Yeah, okay, so Jane confirmed that. Yeah, so that might be a way to search. Now, what type of clasp is this? Sorry, I don't even know, guys. I like jewelry because I sell it, but I don't know the first bit about some of this kind of stuff. Antique silver tone toggle clasp. So I guess it's a toggle clasp for you guys that know more about this kind of stuff. So maybe we could have that in the title. Now remember, your title only has 80 characters, right? So it's give and take. If we're gonna, I guess in this case it's take and give, because if we're gonna put this in, we'd probably have to get rid of something in order to justify putting in toggle clasp, right? Because you can't have more than 80 characters. And if I'm correct, I'm going to copy this. Let me open up another page. Let's go to wordcounter.net. Let me drop in this title there, and let's see how many characters it is. 77. Yeah, so it's close to 80. Let me see some other comments here. Julie says maybe put white instead of fashion, since pearls come in different colors now. That's a great idea, right? People certainly search by color. I know that for a fact because we've got some various colored pearls that we've got with this store. Okay, that's a great suggestion. So we've got white. Maybe we've got toggle clasp. Let's see what else. Vince says, would putting pearl bracelet first in the title make much of a difference? Probably, because there is some indication that your most important keywords, like the ones that are most likely to be typed in that you want to get pulled up for, there is some indication, though eBay doesn't confirm it, that certainly those need to be up at the start of your title. So that's not a bad idea. Okay, good comment, Vince. Julie says, or maybe use the word gift in it. That's a possibility, right? What if somebody's looking for a pearl bracelet gift or pearl gift or, pearl birthday gift? So that's what's tough about this. It's like if we had all the characters in the world that we could put in this, I would put every one of these things in. But if we add something like gift or white or toggle, clasp, it means we've got to pull out something here, don't we? And I would say, I don't know, what do you guys think? What do you think the weakest keywords here are? Like the most, I guess, the least likely to be searched? Because we don't really know that, honestly. Like that's hard to come up with. There's not a lot of research out there that will tell us what keywords are typed in more than others on eBay. There's a few things, but not anything that's overly conclusive. Take out, so Jane thinks maybe take out certainly the word new. I actually agree with that. I don't know if I would keep new is more of like a filler that we'll use occasionally if you've only got a few characters and you got to just stick something in. So I would agree with that. New, probably pull out. Catherine says, what about wedding gift? Sometimes a bride may want to have same theme clothes and accessories. Yeah, I agree. Or even like I've seen some that are like wedding set, but wedding gift for sure. Yeah, so here's the thing, guys. Like your guys' guesses are as good as mine on some of this stuff. Like who's to say right here? Because there's not a lot of tools out there that'll really tell us. How do we really know what keywords are going to be money here? It's hard to say, right? Like we can think like a shopper, and you better believe I talk to when I'm listing pearls. I'm talking to people who are looking for pearls or know about pearls. So I'm talking to my wife, I'm talking to my mother-in-law, I'm trying to get a better idea of what to put because I just don't know enough about the market, although I will. So because it's hard to say, here's the key. You guys got to do a lot of testing, okay? So, and you can't test anything unless you have a lot of listings created. Let me go back to that list for a second. Right? Like so far, it's obvious these keywords haven't been overly effective. So I think there's no question about it. We need to rework this title. I don't be so quick to assume, well, it's not a good product, right? Like based on this, it makes it look like it's not a good product, but don't be quick to assume that. I think there's obvious improvements we can make on this title. So what I would do is I would take all these suggestions, I would rework the title a little bit, and then I would list it another week and see what happens. And you would be shocked because if you key on one of those really good words and you stumble upon one that really does make a difference, or you reorder it a little bit, that might go from 1 to 30 next week just because I made a few changes. So never assume just after listing something for a week or a couple of weeks that it's just a crappy product or it's just not something people want, because the problem might actually lie in how you titled it. And I know this webinar isn't supposed to be about titles necessarily, but it is something that you guys have to look at. Okay, so we're probably going to move off the title thing for just a minute. Oh, Jane says hand knotted is important to me as well. Yeah. And I'm getting a lot of comments on what words to take out. So these are good suggestions, guys. So just keep it in your mind. The bottom line is make sure you adjust keywords and titles. Now, if you don't know, if you really have no idea what other keywords to put, which will happen sometimes, especially if you're in a new market and you're not used to listing those types of products and you can't come up with alternatives, go out onto eBay and Google it or eBay it, right? Do a search. Try to find other people who are listing similar products and see what they say, right? What keywords are they using? Because there's people that have been in the market that have been selling pearls for a long time on eBay, Surely I could go and I could check out their stuff, look at what they have in their titles, see how their titles are ordered, and maybe come up with some better ideas. Okay? Look at people that have gone before and are already doing it. Okay, so let's look at another issue here. And Karen, you're actually leading me into something that we're going to be talking about. But let's look at our pictures. Okay? Like let's look at another one of these. Here's this one that only has one. This only has one view, right? Here's the picture. The quality is actually pretty good. You get this nice zoom effect, you'll notice. That's because it's a pretty high resolution, large image. So you can see these pretty well. And here's another view of it on a wrist. Okay. There you go. So you guys can all see it. The question is, how do pictures impact things? They usually don't impact how many views you're getting, right? Like a picture is not going to drive more traffic. But I guess that's only partially true, because if it's a really nice image and it jumps out at you, quality's good, that can get you into this page right here, right? And you may look at it and consider buying it. Pictures really impact the conversion rate. So if you can get a good quality picture, make sure to have it on there. If you can't, and sometimes with doing some drop shipping, you can only get the pictures you can get. I mean, sometimes you're stuck and that's all you've got access to. But pictures do play a role. So look at your pictures. Try to get really nice ones, high resolution ones if you can, because that'll help your conversion rate for sure. Now, what about your policies for just a second? That's another thing we look at. I've seen some clients that have listed a lot of products, but they have no return policy, right? And here's where your returns are right here. When you're looking at a listing, 14-day money back on these, buyer pays return shipping, and then you can add more details to it. I want to encourage all you guys when you're doing your listings to do at least a 14-day money back return policy. Because these days, I mean, there's a lot of people that they look at the return policy before they buy anything, and they're not going to buy something that has no return policy. If you're working with a drop shipper, I promise you they have some kind of a return policy. So if it gets there damaged or somebody doesn't like it when they get it, usually your suppliers are pretty good to work with you on that. So have good policies on your listings. That's important. Another issue might be your feedback. Now, if you'll look at this account right here, this is where you see feedback. If you're looking at any listing, seller information shows up over here, and you see right now these guys have a feedback of 2. Okay, it's not very much, is it? Do people look at feedback? They do. Some eBayers more than others. Is it possible to sell products when you have no feedback at all? Definitely. So if there's anybody here who's really new and has got a new eBay account and is like, oh crap, I don't have any feedback, how am I ever supposed to get my business off the ground? Seriously, you can still do it and you'll do it just fine. But it does pay to have a high number of feedback. So over time, you're going to earn that feedback. You're taking good care of people. It's going to help you long term. If there is ever an issue where there's a discrepancy or a buyer is frustrated for whatever reason, I look at it beyond just the ramifications of that specific transaction. Because if you don't take care of that person and they ding you with a negative feedback, that could hurt us for more sales, on into the future. Sometimes it pays to just refund somebody, and even though they're in the wrong, you just take the hit for it, because if you can at least get them to either not leave you feedback or leave you a positive feedback, it might help your sales going forward. So feedback's something to look at. Let's see, what else? Oh, yeah, I always encourage my clients to check their statistics. So if you're doing volume listing and you've got a ton of listings up, you should be coming in here often to look at your views and your watchers on each item. Okay, views are just when people look at your item. A watcher is if somebody saves it to like their watch list or their favorite list. And you can see this one actually, this specific one has 12 views and a watcher. So somebody saved this item to their favorites, and that's always a really positive sign. You can kind of see what this specific one looks like. Right? Always positive to see a watcher. It means a buyer might be around the corner, but you don't have to have watchers to close sales. It's just nice if you can get them. But if you repeatedly, so let's take this example down here that we were working on a little bit earlier. This little bracelet right here, the one that only has one view on it. Let's say we rework the title, and the next week it gets another like 1 or 2 views. And then, let's say we let it go another week. Maybe that was just a bad week for pearls. We let it go another week, and it only gets 1 or 2 views. I'm a big fan of the 3 strikes and you're out kind of rule. If you're not getting good enough views after you rework the title several times, it might be worth it to pull it off. Unless you've reviewed some of these other things and you've improved your policies, you've improved your pictures. At that point, if you can't lower your price, I guess that's the last thing to do. And I want to emphasize that because our first I guess knee-jerk reaction when something is not selling very well is we're like, oh crap, it's the price. Let's lower the price, right? I promise you that could be part of the issue, but that's never the first lever for you to pull when you're trying to figure out how to get your stuff to sell better. Don't automatically drop your price. Like, make that the very last thing you look at. Try to make all of these little changes that we just talked about here, and then last pull down the price. Now, we've got plenty of margin built into this. Kind of arbitrarily, with a little research, we listed it at $34.99. If this sells and starts selling well, we may leave it at $34.99 or bump up the price. But if it continues to sit here, maybe the price is the issue, and we can test it by dropping the price a little bit just to see if we get a little more interest in it. Okay? That's a lever that we could pull as well. And then last but not least, if a lot of your listings are jewelry like this or electronics, you're in a field that's going to be generally a little tougher to compete in. And I can say that somewhat authoritatively because I've done the jewelry thing for a long time, and jewelry is hard. It's tough to compete, tougher than a lot of other stuff that's out there because there's lots of jewelry sellers, and there's jewelry sellers from China that are on here undercutting everybody, and it's just a very competitive market. And I feel the same way about electronics. So if you're struggling with sales and you're in those 2 industries pretty heavily, you might want to consider, trying something else out on eBay because it's a little easier to compete sometimes in other industries. Okay, but that should be a rule of thumb. Like, I a lot of times I have my clients do lots of, you're in there listing lots of different types of products from different industries, so you can get a little bit of a feel for everything, and even from that, see sort of what's getting interest and what's not. Because there's things that we've listed kind of off the cuff that we've seen from a supplier that we're like, hey, let's list this and see how it does. It may not be something I would ever buy, but I listed it anyway, and it ended up doing really well. And I never would have thought to do that based on what I would have thought to do. But just because you wouldn't buy something doesn't mean somebody else wouldn't, right? Or would. So you need to make sure that you're listing products that even don't appeal to you. Try out different products. I guess that's the main point. So those are some of the suggestions I've got. If you're struggling in sales, specifically with the retail method or with drop shipping, those are some of the first levers to pull and adjust things. Another reason why you might struggle a little bit is just because you haven't developed the skill set well enough to do this effectively. If you're doing retail drop shipping, and maybe some of you guys who have been doing retail drop shipping or just drop shipping in general on eBay, what are some of the what in your guys' opinion, what are some of the important skill sets to have to do this kind of a strategy effectively? What do you guys think? I'll let you think about that for a second, especially those of you guys who've done this. What skills do you have to really succeed at the volume drop shipping strategy we're doing here? I've got a couple in my mind, but I'm curious what you guys think. While we're thinking about that, Rhonda says, I was told that I could go on their page after they bought an item and write feedback for them, but eBay won't let won't let me unless I have 5 sales. How do I get feedback? So for you, Rhonda, it's true. A lot of times you can't leave feedback until you've gotten some feedback. But it's not necessarily that you have to have sales as much as you just have to have some feedback. Even through buying would allow you to go do that too. So you can get buyers feedback. Feedback comes either through buying something or through selling something. And so if you have 0 feedback right now, you'll be able to get feedback through buying a few products and or selling a few things, and then over time you're able to leave that feedback for other people too. But remember, like, everybody starts with 0, right? So and people will buy from you if you have 0. I promise you they will. It just happens all the time. It's not it's there. So there's some buyers out there that may not buy from a seller that has a 0 feedback or a low feedback score, but that's not a majority of buyers on eBay. A lot of people, as long as you don't have lots of negative feedback, they'll still buy from you. And then over time, as you get more and more feedback, it'll bring those other buyers into the market that may not have otherwise been there. Yeah, Stephanie makes a good point about a skill set you need to have. You need to be persistent and consistent. I like that, because you can't. Consistency is huge on this. You're constantly listing items. You're constantly checking your numbers here, and you can't just do it aggressively for a week or a couple of weeks and then stop and then start and then stop. You really need to stay with it, so you consistently have 75, 80, 100, 200, 300 listings going all the time. Now, there is the question, at that point, when you've got that many listings, it's hard to keep up with it all. Well, it is, and that's a good problem to have, because at that point, if you're doing enough business, and you should be, you can hire somebody part-time to help you maintain it, right? I mean, you're not ever hiring anybody until you would be doing several $1,000s a month in sales or more, before you would ever consider that. Or not, I'm sorry, not sales, but you would need to be doing that in profit before you would probably ever consider hiring a little bit of help. So that's a good problem to have. But yeah, you got to stay consistent and persistent. Karen says organization is key. Yeah, you got to be organized for sure. And I'm not the most organized person in the world, and so I remember I struggled with this a little bit, because you just got to make sure, if you've got that many items listed, that you know where they're coming from, and you need to know, if you're doing it from different suppliers, you need to know who they are and what their policies are. You got to stay really organized. Kirk says you got to make sure you're doing listings that match the time of the year, so the seasonality thing is key. I would say your speed is huge. Like, you guys, if you're going to do this in volume, you can't be someone who takes 45 minutes to create a listing, right? Because you're trying to really pump out listings. That's the key here. If you're trying to keep listings maxed out, you got to pump them out, and you really need to be doing listings. I mean, it depends on the item, but 5-6 minutes a piece or less, right? And then you can really hammer out listings. That's one thing that really slows up my clients, and that just takes practice. You gotta look at your analytics a lot. You got to be in here looking at these numbers and trying to figure out why this item only has 1 and this item has 19. Does it have to do with the title? What levers can I pull to change that, like we talked about earlier? And I would say you've got to be adaptable too. You've got to be willing to try out different markets and different suppliers. You're just not in a position to just stick with one supplier all the time doing this kind of a strategy. You want to do multiple suppliers. A lot of you guys probably start using Walmart, but you want to move on to other retailers, right? You might try Sears or Target. Maybe you've never even tried using Overstock, so try it. List some products that are in a different category that you've never done before. You've got to be able to adapt, because if you're struggling with your sales, be willing to try something out that you haven't done before. Okay, so that's something that you probably want to consider as well. So at that point, though, like I've had a few clients over the years that have that have told me, after doing the retail strategy for a long time, some of them really love it, right? And I hope all of you guys get to that point where you've really enjoyed it. You've been making money with it. It's really improved things for your business. I mean, I want all of you guys to get to that point, and I think you can. But if you're not willing to do some of the things that we talked about today, or maybe you just don't love what you're doing on eBay, and that could be a problem. If that's the case, we need to look at what are some of our alternatives, right? Do you have to be a big seller on eBay to do well on the internet and make money online in our program? Definitely not. Like, we really push it hard at the beginning because I think this is your best chance at making good money when you first start. But we don't always have to do this strategy. I would like it if you do, but you don't. So if you're in a spot right now where it's like you've been doing this retail strategy for months, maybe you've been making pretty decent money, but maybe you just don't love it, or maybe you want to try focusing on something else, or you just don't plain want to do it. You'd rather just focus on a website, or whatever the case may be. I'm okay with that. But I just want to tell you guys what maybe some of your alternatives at that point are, because there's other things you can do online to make money, and the program will cater to whatever you want to do. But from an eBay standpoint, though, if we're not doing the retail drop shipping, you could do a little bit of international sourcing. I think I've told a lot of you guys that's one of the things I do. I'm constantly looking for products overseas. I wish I could. I'm not. I mean, you can get domestic products too, but I like international sourcing because I can get products for cheap. I mean, the markup in pearls like this, or jewelry, or anything you can get overseas that you can get shipped to you, is tremendous. So if you don't love the drop shipping part, maybe you could focus more on this as a strategy, and you may find that you really enjoy this a lot better. Because the pros of doing this versus drop shipping is you'll never deal with an out of stock issue, right? Because you're the one who carries the stock. If you don't have the product, you're going to pull the listing off of eBay, right? There's lots of little benefits to doing that. So that's an option if you don't love doing this. Another thing, which, funny enough, not a lot of my clients do, but I've had a few over the years that have, you can do some local sourcing. There's a guy that owns a really popular eBay blog. It's called the eBay Entrepreneur. I think it's the eBayEntrepreneur.com. This guy just does, for the most part, local sourcing. So he'll go out to like your retailers locally, garage sales, little flea markets, whatever he can go to get cheap products. He sources them and then he sells them all week, and then he does it all again. And then again and again, and that's the way he likes to do it. I personally wouldn't like to do that as much. I'd rather a more automated strategy, but I've had a few clients that have done that and done well. So that's something that we could do on eBay. I already talked about maybe sourcing products domestically. You can find manufacturers, drop shippers here in the United States that could work, or in your country. Liquidation sites are interesting. I'll show you one real quick. And some of this stuff we'll have to do in another webinar, but maybe you guys have heard of something called liquidation.com. It's kind of a, I don't know, like retailers that, they've got overstock, or they've got stuff they've got to get rid of, or last year's merchandise or whatever. They'll liquidate it all for cheap, and then you can go on here and actually bid on it. And I've won some bids. The one I did this past one I did with liquidation was I bought like 100 and something scarves, but I bought them in like the middle of the summer. So like I've been sitting on some of these for a while, but I did it knowing that when the weather cooled down, I'd be able to sell them. So liquidation.com, I got on here and bid on these scarves, and I ended up getting them for like, I think it was like 70 cents a piece. And, they can retail probably for anywhere from 25 to 30 bucks a piece. So, I mean, you can bid some really cool stuff on here. You guys will have to check that out. If you're interested in doing a little of your own inventory, you can do some of these liquidation sites and do real well. And then I've actually had a few clients that make their own products, right? Maybe you do some quilting on the side, or Maybe you do some of your own handmade custom jewelry. You can do some of that stuff on eBay, but even better than that, you do if you're doing your own handmade kind of stuff, do it on Etsy. I don't know how many of you guys have ever shopped on Etsy, but it's huge for handmade stuff. Let your coach know that that's what you want to do, and we can help you out with an Etsy store and show you how to sell there. You can sell on eBay, but for handmade stuff, I think Etsy is definitely your best bet. And then if all else fails, guys, and you're like, I really don't want to sell on eBay that much. I just haven't loved it. I want to do something altogether different. That's completely fine. We can build an e-commerce website. We can do an affiliate website. We can do a blog that sells advertising. There's some you can sell on Amazon. Like there's a lot of different ways that we teach people to market products and make money online. So don't feel like you're backed up in a corner if you haven't loved your eBay experience, because you're not. Like we're going to branch off into other things. We just push the eBay thing so hard because it's just proven time and time again. If you follow through on some of these strategies, this is your best bet at getting in there and really just bringing in some good revenue into the company. You'll do it here more quickly than anywhere else. But look, I've got clients that love doing their own e-commerce website much more than they love doing the eBay thing. Or clients that do blogging, and we blog on a certain niche and we sell advertising space and make money that way. There's so many different ways to do it. So I just want to make sure that I hope it doesn't get to this point for you guys. But if you ever get to a point where you're burned out and you're ready just to kind of go on to something else, or just focus on something else altogether, like we of course have options for that, and you can work with your coach on deciding when or if you ever do that. So that'll probably be it. Let me just check to see if there's any other questions, concerns, comments. We're gonna finish up. I just want to open it up for some questions real quick. We can talk on this topic if you guys want, or anything eBay related. But let's maybe keep it to this topic first, and then I'm gonna stop the recording and I can answer any other questions. But let me know if you guys have questions. I'd love to answer them. I'm not seeing much yet. I'm going to go ahead and just stop the recording, and I'll leave it open here for just a second for you guys to answer or to ask any other questions you've got.